Like giant billboards on the horizon, the skylines of today's amusement and theme parks announce their presence while highlighting their main attractions. With each new installment of a major ride or roller coaster, they beckon the public to come out and test drive their latest high-tech thrill machines. New rides and technologies are only part of the story. People are coming to the parks in numbers that haven't been seen since Coney Island's golden age in the early 1900s. Amazed today, as they were then, by the newest attractions technology has to offer. Today's high adrenaline rides respond perfectly to people's need to be challenged, the desire to venture forward, sideways, and sometimes even upside down with technology. At the same time, the traditional sights and sounds along the park's midways harken back to an earlier, simpler day. At the best parks, visitors today can still feel the comfort of the familiar, even as they go to places they've never been, often aboard rides they've never before ridden.
I think a great park has something for everybody. A good combination of creativity as well as authenticity to create atmospheres and create situations where people truly enjoy themselves in a situation where their mind can help them enjoy themselves.
The owners of today's amusement parks are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into ways of capturing the minds, hearts, and discretionary income of their patrons by giving each park goer the opportunity to have his or her version of optimum fun. The current wave of popularity runs the gamut from the self-avowed amusement park junkies to the typical family out for an afternoon of fun.
The popularity of theme parks and amusement parks today are probably at their peak, at least for the last 20 years. It's that rush for adrenaline. It's that wish to whoosh, as I call it, for those who want to climb aboard, be strapped in, and say, why am I ever doing this?
At the best parks, old and new, big and small, there can be found 4 key elements that have traditionally made a great park great. Besides hair-raising thrill rides, which are indispensable in motivating most people to visit in the first place, a great park, secondly, must have wonderful, wide midways with sweet and savory aromas that warm the heart and classic attractions that inspire the imagination. Thirdly, since amusement parks are an outdoor, warm weather form of entertainment, they must provide different, fun ways of cooling off. And finally, a great park should be designed with attractions that take full advantage of its greatest asset, its guests, by offering different group experiences and ways for people to have friendly, good-natured encounters that are often highly amusing as well. By journeying around the country to 4 great parks, Cedar Point on the shores of Lake Erie, Kennywood outside of Pittsburgh, Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia, and Knoebels in the foothills north of Scranton, Pennsylvania, we'll see how the 4 essential ingredients of a great park work together to give both a sense of place and a guaranteed good time for all. At these 4 parks, you'll also be put in the front seat of their marquee attraction and element number 1 of what makes a park great, their major coasters. Finally, we'll go to Universal Studios in Orlando to show how this newer, high-tech theme park has inherited the rich legacy of the more traditional amusement parks. For many people, great amusement parks are synonymous with great roller coasters, which are the biggest draw behind the more than $5 billion in annual total park revenue. Currently, there are almost 300 roller coasters operating in North America alone, with more on the drawing boards. The newest are the steel coasters, which besides being smoother than the older wooden coasters, have brought added loops, somersaults, padded seats, and gravitational designs for extra riding pleasure and thrill. Because roller coasters and other high thrill rides are the main attraction, most parks need to introduce a new one every few years for them to retain the public's attention.
We call it the Coaster Wars for a while there, and it's still going on to a point that each park each year builds a new ride. And out of all those rides, you're going to find one park that's going to claim, I have the biggest, fastest, longest coaster this year.
I think the industry is somewhat in a renaissance. The use of computers, computer-aided design, as well as computer operations are allowing us to do things for our guests that are much more thrilling, much more fun, much more enjoyable than was possible.
The term renaissance is appropriate because today's great parks are experiencing a resurgence of popularity. The first great era of amusement parks in this country began with the Chicago Columbian Exposition of 1893.
The Columbian Exposition was the first of the really modern world fairs, and it had a midway, the Midway Plaisance, which included as its centerpiece the great Ferris wheel of George Ferris.
The imaginatively themed layout of the Columbian Expo would serve as a model for amusement parks to come, beginning with Coney Island in Brooklyn, New York. The introduction of the early thrill rides at Coney in the 1900s stepped up the pace and popularity of the park, with daily crowds of up to 500,000. The modern roller coaster and several of its precursors had their first tryout at Coney Island and were quickly copied at parks across the land as their popularity turned into a rage by the 1920s. The golden age would not last. A long period of decline brought on by the Depression coincided with a devastating fire at Chicago's Riverview Park in 1932. In this period, the only real bright spot was the opening of Disneyland in 1955. Disney's success was unique in that it was based on elaborate theming rather than thrill rides, the stock in trade at most other parks, who hadn't the means of imitating Disney. But the advent of the new coasters in the last couple of decades has made the end of the 20th century a veritable boom time for almost all park owners and park goers alike. Emphasis on innovation, bringing the public rides that are new for their day, has been a key to the success of great amusement parks since the beginning.
People come to amusement parks today in record numbers for the same reason they did in the year 1900 or 1910.
David Francis is author of a book on Cedar Point Amusement Park in Ohio, which in the early 1900s was known as Queen of American Watering Places.
In those years, the industry was innovative. They built exciting rides that drew people's attention. Well, it's back now.
Today, innovation at Cedar Point means roller coasters, the first of the ingredients that go into a great park. More are found here than anywhere else, including two of the tallest in the world. The newer of the two is the Mantis, and its innovation is that it is a stand-up coaster, looping upside down 4 times and sideways twice as it drops 137 feet.
With 56 rides and 12 roller coasters, they're the largest ride park on the planet Earth. And boy, is there a lot of excitement up there. You walk around, you see rides everywhere you look. They put their rides up to the midway, so you hear the screams, the excitement. And their French fries are probably the best that you'll find anywhere.
A classic amusement park, complete with 3 antique carousels and a vintage Main Street, the beauty and charm of Cedar Point is everywhere to be seen. Yet the nearly 17 million rides that are given on Cedar Point coasters each year are testament to the park's main claim to fame. Its amazing assortment dominates the park's skyline to form the largest collection of roller coasters in the world. The man chiefly responsible for the coaster building frenzy at Cedar Point in the last decade is its COO, Richard Kinzel.
Roller coasters will generate attendance, and attendance will generate profits, and profits will give us the ability to invest in new roller coasters and new technology and new innovations and to keep the industry going.
One of the newer steel coasters, the Magnum XL200, is a monster so hot that Carr and Driver magazine felt compelled to review its ride a couple of years after it was introduced in 1989, calling it an engineering marvel.
as you click up the hill and you get to the very top, you're 200 and some odd feet above the ground, and you're looking straight out into Lake Erie. And if on a clear day you can see Canada, which is amazing. You look off to the right, you see the park, you see the sailboats off to your left. And then when you drop, just everything breaks loose and you're in for the ride of your life.
It's a business where fathers and sons will hold hands. You can see the excitement building as they get onto the roller coaster. When they exit the roller coaster, that sense or that look in their eye that they've really accomplished something. It's a great feeling.
The Magnum is definitely a top 10 roller coaster for just about every roller coaster fan that I know.
The ride is the best. It's definitely the best rush. The steep, just coming down, the steepness of it coming down.
Feels like you're flying.
Real fast.
Real fast.
Real fast.
Gee, you have to leave your arms in there the whole time. I did.
My head flew back, and I was like, my head's not going back, so I had to like go, and like it came back.
Twice in 15 minutes, man.
It was fantastic. It's the best rush in the world.
Oh yeah, best ride in the world.
Cedar Point also has an outstanding variety of wooden coasters. Its Mean Streak is one of the tallest and fastest wooden coasters in the world. Its banked curves, high speeds, and moments of negative gravity accent a course that crisscrosses the structure 9 times. The coaster is particularly beautiful, owing to the 1.7 million board feet of southern yellow pine that hold it aloft.
When a person first gets on that wooden roller coaster and they hear the clippity-clap going up that first hill, it's a memory that they'll remember most of their lives. A steel coaster, on the other hand, gives you the ability to go higher and faster. And it gives you the ability to do corkscrews, to do inversions. And basically, from a maintenance standpoint, it's much cheaper to operate a steel coaster than it is a wooden coaster.
Common to wooden and steel coasters are the forces acting on the passenger. Gravity pushing down, the seat force pushing back upward through contact with the seat, and inertia in the direction of the car's motion. On a steep descent, we get the feeling of weightlessness on account of the sharp reduction from full gravity force to half or third gravity as we fall. Though Cedar Point is justified in calling itself the roller coaster capital of the world, there are today in other locales many noteworthy examples of this #1 ingredient of a great park that deserve to be viewed with both awe and fear. First, there is the Drachen Fire at Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia, featuring many first-of-a-kind thrill elements and designed by Aerodynamics of Utah, the creators of the Magnum. Using CAD, or computer-aided design, the engineers carefully plotted the track of the coaster, pushing the envelope to the limits of acceptable velocity and G-forces. The highlight of the ride begins with a loop through a corkscrew, followed closely by near-zero gravity over a camelback hump. Then the Batwing, which rolls you upside down twice like a boomerang.
Computers have helped us tremendously in being able to design roller coasters to do many different things now.
Rich Henry is Director of Operations and Safety at Kennywood Park outside of Pittsburgh, where we encounter our next great coaster, the Steel Phantom.
They know exactly how many G's it's going to pull at a certain element. They know exactly what effect it's going to have on the human body. This technology has allowed the coaster designers to do many things that were not possible with a wooden roller coaster.
A steel coaster differs from a wooden one in that passengers can experience seat forces from more radical angles as the car makes its way through the tightly banked turns that its steel track and locking wheels allow. On an 80-degree bank, a person will feel a strong seat force counteracting their own inertia that is on an 80-degree angle relative to the force of gravity. At 225 feet and 80-plus miles per hour, Kennywood's Steel Phantom boasts the longest and fastest drop in the world. That pretty much says it all, except that it's the second drop that's the record breaker, just when you thought you'd survived the worst, leaving you careening down a natural ravine toward the Monongahela River, and then abruptly breakneck speed. The effect is like time-lapse photography, where you only catch glimpses of the scene flying by. We return to Cedar Point to ride the Raptor. Like many other steel coasters, Raptor is an inverted loop roller coaster. On these, gravity and inertia are at opposite directions, and the seat force, which is the difference of the two, feels small, nearly weightless. At the bottom of the loop, gravity and inertia will combine to make the seat force seem strangely heavy. Unlike other inverted loop roller coasters, Raptor rides on the outside of its structure. The seats are similar to ski lift chairs suspended below its inverted track. Riders see nothing but their feet dangling below them, which is especially unnerving, or euphoric depending upon your pleasure, when Raptor goes into its 6 upside-down turns, and suddenly your feet point skyward. Like all great coasters of the past and present, it's a ride you'll remember for the rest of your life, and probably want to try again. And that's what coaster enthusiasts and park owners alike say it's all about. Great midways are the second ingredient of a great park. They are the wide pedestrian ways that keep the stream of visitors and energy flowing in the highly charged atmosphere of people having fun. Along the midways, we encounter the intangibles that are an important part of the experience. The sound of the carousel organ and the concessionaire's bark. The whimsical surroundings set off by the dazzling array of neon and incandescent lights. The rumble and thunder of the roller coasters swinging low, then climbing into the warm night. The midways of the great parks provide a setting, a context for the different rides and attractions. They are the safe and familiar ground from which to venture out to the park's thrill rides.
You have to put together an entire package for a great amusement park. You cannot just take the world's largest roller coaster and stick it in the middle of a parking lot.
Roller coasters may be the most popular rides, but they would feel out of place without the complement of the beloved, time-honored attractions found along the park's midways.
Put them in a wonderful setting, in the woods, lots of flowers, have a great selection of food and games, enough to really provide people a great day's entertainment. That's a great amusement park.
The midway is the setting for the drama that unfolds at the park, where families reconvene after a ride, where young people can meet, and from where the elderly can sit, watch, and reminisce. The Carousel is the attraction most closely associated with the midway, as it provides both the kind of ambience and pure, innocent fun people identify with amusement parks. Usually located on the central midway, it is literally the heart of the park, the attraction to which most people are almost subconsciously drawn, instantly pumping them with the sights, sounds, and symbols of the whole amusement park experience. Knoebels Groves outside Scranton, Pennsylvania, has one of the greatest collections of carousels found anywhere. David Winn is the proud curator of these timeless treasures.
Most people ride the carousel one of the first things that they do when they get here, and one of the last things they do before they leave. And all the other rides just sort of fit in between. What's more nostalgic than a carousel? I mean, you have the grandfathers who bring their grandsons here and say, I remember when I rode this carousel.
Knoebels' 4-abreast Grand Carousel is one of the last places in the world where you can still catch the brass ring to win a free ride. Weighing more than 27 tons, it is one of the largest carousels in existence. 1913 by George Kramer of New York. who bought the horses from famed woodcarver Charles Carmel. Carmel's horses are said to possess an almost magical lifelike quality. Frozen in time, they transport you back to a day when the carousel was considered a marvel of the machine age.
Some other parks have gotten rid of their carousels. You know, they are big bucks. You know, and you can have an auction and sell off the carousel, and almost always you'll find that when a park sells its carousel, its days are numbered.
Some consider Kennywood, located outside Pittsburgh, to be the best traditional amusement park in the country, with midways that recall a time when quiet leisure could coexist with penny-a-ride thrills. It started life as the classic trolley park, tracks being extended to bring people from the city, beginning in 1898. Kennywood was designed with gardens and rides surrounding a man-made lagoon, thus creating Kennywood's first midways. They continued to expand and build new midways right up to the Depression of the 1930s. The owners chose to invest in solid structures and permanent fixtures, many of which still exist at the park. Today, Kennywood is an intoxicating tangle of midways, the perfect place to get lost on a summer's day. And in the evening, the lights along the midways of the newest themed area, Lost Kennywood, display a beauty that hasn't been seen since the days when people still marveled at the magic of incandescence. Its allure, however, is not lost on the new themed areas at other parks, as is noted by Kennywood's marketing director, Andy Quinn.
When you're talking themed parks, now they're starting to theme into traditional amusement midway type parks of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. They will have whole sections. With that, they're borrowing some of the things we've always had.
As one of only 2 amusement parks to be named a National Historic Landmark, Kennywood has long had a market on tradition. Today, other parks are consciously trying to appeal to the public's dual desires, for the excitement of what lies ahead, and also for the comfort of what's come before. One example is Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, which beautifully blends the old and the new by providing its guests the experience of an authentic New England fishing village, as well as a turn-of-the-century amusement park midway, side by side with some of the park's most futuristic techno rides. By contrast, one of the latest arrivals to Kennywood's midways is the Sky Coaster, a form of bungee jumping. As at other parks, it has fulfilled the role of spectator sport for people lining the midways. At the center of the park's lagoon, the Sky Coaster is perfectly situated for viewing. It winches you up by a steel cable 200 feet above the crowds. On the count of 3, you're coaxed to pull the ripcord and plummet toward the crowd below. You finally find yourself swinging back and forth in a great arc as you're overcome by a feeling of giddy euphoria.
We were scared to death. We want to do it again. That was great.
For those venturing further out from the midways, Kennywood offers a challenging array of wooden roller coasters, most dating back to the 1920s, when the advent of modern planes and high-speed autos had people captivated by the idea of speed. One such ride is the Thunderbolt, which the New York Times has called the ultimate coaster. The Thunderbolt is an extremely physical beast. It jostles and jolts at tremendous speed as it makes its way around the circumference of what is really 2 wooden coasters joined together at the middle. The first and last drops of the 1924 Pippin were retained. You start by plunging down a natural ravine in double-dip dives of 80 and 90 feet. Thunderbolt next spirals around an infield. Before ducking back down into a ravine. Under the steel Phantom. After a ride on the Thunderbolt, it's nice to walk out onto the midway at Kennywood, knowing you have the option of either jumping back in line for another go, or else slowing the pace down to a stroll and absorbing the surroundings while you catch your breath. The midway here is the matrix that holds the park together, making it greater than the sum of its parts. It exemplifies the dual role midways play at every great park in America. At the same time, a beautiful buffer zone from all the madness and launching pad into it. As a form of outdoor recreation, amusement parks do their best business in hot weather, be it in the sweltering days of summer or in the vacation lands of the South. The third essential ingredient, therefore, to a great park has always been a means of cooling down. One way is a ride that gets you soaked. Another is an attraction that lifts you up out of the oppressive warmth, providing at the same time an interesting, often stunning vantage point. The original such contraption, and still the most famous, was the Ferris wheel. At the Chicago Columbian Exposition, the highlight for most visitors was a chance to be carried aloft by George Ferris's magnificent 264-foot wheel. The machine caught people's imaginations because in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, its only purpose was pure pleasure. Other airborne icons to follow in the history of amusements were Coney Island's circular airplane rides and Chicago Riverview's parachute drop. Through the years, versions of all these rides were installed at amusement parks across the country as cheap and entertaining ways of uplifting one's spirits. Busch Gardens in Williamsburg, Virginia, is considered by many the most beautiful theme park in America. The 3,600-acre site near the James River is one of the most exquisite examples of landscaping in the country. And Busch Gardens takes full advantage of its site by offering a variety of rides that lift you above the abundant tree cover for a great view of the surroundings. Of course, on a few of those rides, you may have other things on your mind as you plummet back down to earth. But a wonderfully peaceful way of taking in the sights is the Sky Ride, as you travel to each of the themed areas. Busch Gardens has recreated the 17th century charm of Old World Europe, with 9 different hamlets representing the different countries. The Sky Ride stations in the hamlets have names like Zeppelin Landung and Blimp Debarcadere. The other, more aggressive way to power tour the area is aboard one of Busch Gardens' steel coasters. The Big Bad Wolf is a modern high-speed roller coaster. Suspended from an overhead track, riders travel seemingly out of control through a recreation of a Bavarian village. It then swoops down low over the natural terrain of the park. The experience of the landscape becomes an integral part of the ride.
I think Busch Gardens Williamsburg is probably the only amusement park or theme park in the world that can take old English hamlets and put them side by side with new high-tech rides and make it all fit and look good.
Busch Gardens offers other, wetter ways of cooling off from the Virginia summer heat. Escape from Pompeii, whose pyrotechnics recall those of several famous attractions at Coney Island, is a traditional Shoot-The-Chutes ride with a decidedly high-tech twist. Water rides have long been a staple at great amusement parks. The original Shoot-The-Chutes, one of the earliest large-scale water rides, was so popular that the owners of Luna Park at Coney Island opened up 4 others in different cities. At Busch Gardens, visitors float through a recreation of the ruins of Pompeii. The ride combines both fire and water, heat and coolness, to keep people in a state of peak sensory stimulation.
Computerized operation with state-of-the-art operations in all aspects, monitoring everything from boat positioning to air quality and water quality.
Steve Carr, head of operations at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, is intimately familiar with the ride systems.
As you enter the building, sensors note your boat location and trigger a series of events that recreate the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. And beams fall and lights swing and crashes sound and fire is triggered at different points throughout the ride. The fire is real fire. It's natural gas. It's extremely hot. We have air quality monitors up in there that turn over the air in that building about every minute or so.
The ride's entire sequence is controlled by an integrated mainframe computer, which tracks the triggering of effects as the boats make their way through the building complex. The contrast is exhilarating between the fire and heat inside the building and the cool, moisture-laden air that hits you once the doors open to the chute and the water at the bottom of your 5-story plunge. Spectators on the sidelines get a free dousing as well. In the nostalgically themed Lost Kennywood section of Kennywood Park, there's a recreated Shoot-The-Chutes called the Pittsburgh Plunge that proves the enduring appeal of this type of ride.
It gets hot here in the summer, and those are used primarily for days that it's so hot you need to cool off.
At first glance, it seems a wonder that a boat can float uphill. But as Andy Quinn explains, the amusement industry has had that one licked for quite some time.
It's nothing more than a roller coaster that flows on a cushion of water. That technology was developed. It was just another weapon in the arsenal of major rides.
So whether the mechanics are relatively simple, or whether they be linked to a complex system of sensors, computers, and special effects, the result is the same. When things heat up, people get a big thrill. While staying cool. The fourth and final ingredient to a great park is people, and lots of them. Crowds are essential for the group experience nature of parks, such as when hurtling down a steep track with a carload of screaming people. It's just not the same when the ride is half empty. Without crowds, such as on an overcast day, a park seems lifeless. There is a long tradition of rides whose goal is literally to throw people together, friends and strangers alike. Coney Island Steeplechase Park featured rides such as the human roulette wheel and the human pool table that would toss people together, often leaving them tangled in compromising positions. Another ride that encouraged contact and interaction between patrons still exists today at most parks, the bumper cars. It was introduced when the auto was still a relative novelty. What fed the rage were underage kids who wanted to drive, and adults who found the bumper cars the perfect release to their driving frustrations. Knoebels Groves in the foothills of Pennsylvania is located far away from the tensions of big city life. It is in this idyllic setting that can still be found, lovingly maintained, many of the rides and amusements from days gone by.
If you flew over it in an airplane, you'd never know it existed down below. It's under this beautiful canopy of trees. You walk through, pay each ticket as you go. Reminds me of the old traditional parks that I grew up in.
Despite its low-key image, or perhaps because of it, Knoebels has been rated the country's second best amusement park, after Cedar Point, by the readers of Inside Track, the industry publication for amusement and theme parks. They write, the food, the people, 3 classic carousels, a world-class coaster, and overall ambience make it one of the world's great parks. Another ride at Knoebels that tends to throw people together is the Scooter bumper car ride, which has become a kind of shrine for bumper car enthusiasts.
The bumper cars at Knoebels are absolutely, positively the best bumper cars on the planet Earth. You're within 20 feet of that bumper car building, and you smell the graphite burning from the connections of the electricity that makes the cars go. And they have vintage scooter cars, and they're vintage lessee cars, and they're well kept. The people take pride in the ride, and talk about a step back in time. Climb back into one of those lessee bumper cars at Knoebels, and boy, you're back there.
riders become delirious with gleeful malice and are then themselves tossed wildly in high-impact smash-ups. The original full-frame metal cars used at Knoebels are much heavier than today's fiberglass-bodied versions, and the collisions much more powerful. To guarantee the authenticity of the attraction well into the future, Knoebels maintains a large inventory of spare cars and parts acquired from defunct scooter rides from around the country. As with spare bumper cars, Knoebels has been successful over the years in collecting an array of rides and attractions from other parks. By far the most famous example is the resurrection of the famed Phoenix roller coaster, formerly the Rocket. Dick Knoebel, the current head of the family-operated park, explains how in 1985 they acquired the coaster.
For years we wanted to have a major wooden roller coaster, and we investigated the costs of it, and at the time we really couldn't afford to build a new one from scratch. We found this coaster in San Antonio, Texas, in an extinct amusement park, Playland to be exact, that sat there for 5 years and nobody knew what to do with this monster, so to speak. And we got the idea, well, why not move it?
Admiring the classic lines of the Phoenix, it's hard to imagine how close it came to being lost forever. Fortunately, the Knoebels family had the vision and know-how to come up with a plan for saving it. Attendance in general for the industry is at an all-time high, up from 151 million in 1970 to an estimated 300 million by the year 2000. And although the crowds are what make a park hum, too much of a good thing can lead to gridlock, choking the fun out of the whole experience, which is something park owners definitely want to avoid. Back at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Executive Director Keith Kaysen explains how the Virginia Park was designed to handle the large summer crowds.
Our park is actually one big loop, and the way we do it in the morning to control the crowd is we open different villages at different times as the numbers reach a certain point, and that's so that once the area opens, it's filled with guests and it just comes alive when the guests enter the area. And the idea is a lot of people will go to the right, and then we'll get some people to go left and just sort of fill into the back of the park. And we have an in-park capacity that once we approach that number, we'll close the gates until people exit, so that the people that are in the park can have a chance to experience everything.
Although they hate turning people away, Busch Gardens believes that not sacrificing the quality of the experience for the quantity of patrons will make for more repeat customers, who are the backbone of the amusement and theme park industry.
In my mind, what makes a great park great, and hopefully we do that here quite often, is its repeatability. We want people to come in today, have such a spectacular experience that they'll be compelled to come back.
From Coney Island to Knoebels Groves to Busch Gardens, it seems the formula for great amusement parks has stayed deceptively simple. Give the thrill seekers a chance to prove their mettle. Give the others an exotic but comfortably pleasing setting and constantly upgrade. The rides and technologies they choose to showcase help redefine their nature as parks, and sometimes the very nature of the industry. Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida is a theme park that fits firmly into the rich lineage of the great parks. With classic ingredients such as themed midways, water attractions, and thrill rides. What separates Universal from other parks is that many of its thrills are simulated or created to give you, for example, the sensation of flying through the air rather than actually doing so on a roller coaster. Here, Hollywood's top production and special effects companies have teamed up with theme park designers to create a vision for the future. They are masters in the field of location-based entertainment, which uses ride simulation to bring people a whole new level of experience. Their movie-based rides have you traveling inward, making your mind believe you've entered into one of Universal's action-adventure films. The rides you experience here are derived from 3 different streams of technology: military flight simulation, cinematic special effects, and robotics. Back to the Future could be categorized as a classic thrill ride. It has you riding in a DeLorean-style auto mounted on a sophisticated hydraulic platform. It seems almost as real as a ride on a roller coaster, and certainly more real than a standard simulator, as visual systems expert Mike Moschel points out.
They want your adrenaline to run as though you're in real danger. A motion-based simulator, such as the Back to the Future ride here, puts more stimulation into you so it can pump your adrenaline higher than a simulator.
Professor Moschel explains that the visual aspect of the ride is supposed to give you the illusion of space-time travel. Its design was based on the same special effects used in award-winning films such as 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Some of the same ideas are there in terms of three-dimensional motion and using everything from styrofoam models to computer generation to produce images that you see as you ride in a simulated automobile through the sky. You're trying to have a cathartic experience. You're trying to simulate the experience of danger and then successful survival from the danger.
One of the top blockbuster thrillers of all time was Jaws. For an entire summer, it kept people out of the water and in the theaters. For several years now, it's been packing them onto a ride at Universal Studios by the same name. Its longevity once again proving the enduring appeal of water rides of all sorts.
Jaws and King Kong employ some giant, what we call cinebotics. And in our world, cinebotics are the combination of cinema and robotics to create our creatures and bring our feature films to life. So we employed some of that technology using hydraulics and some very serious mechanical equipment to drive those guys around.
The movie Earthquake was the first in history to win an Academy Award for special effects. The Universal Studios Park attraction, Earthquake, the big one, comes about as close as you can get to matching the real thing. Its shaking registers 8.3 on the Richter scale, causing a roadway slab and truck weighing 45,000 pounds to come crashing down into a recreated San Francisco subway station. Riding out the disaster with fellow passengers, you share the experience of group trauma, a mainstay of amusement parks since the beginning. In the final cataclysm, 65,000 gallons of water are released. The ride creates all these special effects and then resets them every 2 minutes. You also experience as a group one of the highlight attractions at Universal Studios. Terminator 2 3D is the ultimate dark ride of the mind, in which you feel that you and the other park visitors in the building are actual participants in a real-life adventure. It combines live actors in front of a giant surround screen and a high-resolution 3D action film. The storyline takes place in the eerie apocalyptic setting of the Terminator 2 movie and features many levels of multi-sensory effects.
What it does in particular is it breaks the line of the projection screen. Typically, even in 3D, you were bound by that projection screen. And now by the combination of live effects coming actually out of the projection, and then they go back into the film, that starts to really break down the plane of a traditional film.
The effect is so real that people spontaneously whistle and cheer in amazement at the show's end. It's the same reaction that people have at other great parks around the country when they get off a ride they've really enjoyed. From Coney Island to the present, the rides have changed dramatically. But by sticking to the principles that have allowed them to endure all these years, amusement and theme park owners seem extremely confident that they will continue to adapt to new trends and technologies, that they will fulfill their mandate of always pleasing their public and their insatiable thirst for thrills.
Technology has allowed amusement parks to grow beyond what a lot of people ever thought they would. There doesn't seem to be limits anymore.
Ride designers, ride manufacturers, show producers are all coming up with just wonderful new elements using technology, using computers, using just all of these wonderful things that are out and available now. And I think we have a terribly exciting time coming up for us.
As As our world becomes more complex, it seems we need more sophisticated means of escaping the pressures that come with change. Amusement parks, with their blend of high-tech razzle-dazzle and feel-good atmospherics, seem now as ever the perfect antidote to the stresses of modern life. Yet the heart and soul of the truly great parks provide something even...